There you go, brothers. I throw a few sheep nuts down on the ground, and that it enables me to bring the sheep in if I want to share them or dag them or just check them, drench them, because I don't have a handy dog that can really round them up. The country is where I've lived most of my life. I don't do it very well in the city. The only time I lived in the city was when I was working in Europe playing music. Anyway, in the country it's really important that we get on with our neighbours, and that's what today's video is about. It's about the importance of getting on with your neighbours, and this is something that's really important. And I learnt this from a mate of mine who's a cop. He was a hardened cop that worked in Europe. Get him, Poe! Look up! He worked in Austria, he worked in Greece, he worked right through Europe, and I said to him, what have you gained in your 25 years of being a police officer? And he said, well, out of all the worst situations that he'd ever gone to, they were always domestic ones. It was generally over couples having a dispute and family fights and feuds. And he said, my advice to you, Clay, is to always get on with your neighbour. I thought about that, and I thought, well, I generally do get on with my neighbours. Old Harry there got pissed off one time next door because my daughter was shooting a rabbit on Murray's property, and he thought I was shooting on his property. I wasn't. I'd never do that, but he thought I was, and he went off at me, and I went over and talked to him, and we sorted that out as quickly as I could, because you don't want to leave those sorts of things lingering. And other than that, I get on well with all my neighbours. I dropped Neil up there and his lovely wife and kids some snapper the other day. I always drop some snapper off to Murray, and there's not many neighbours around. But this area here has actually gone up in value hugely since I bought it. I never could have owned a place like this to buy it today what it's worth. What's happened is a whole lot of rich people from overseas have started to move in, which is actually a shame because it's made the prices of property around here unobtainable for my children. So I'll be leaving this property to my children when I go, and that was the reason I actually bought it, to secure something for them. And also I've been living here for 15 years renting it. 2 years ago I bought it. My houseboat is up there, and the reason it's up there is because it was going to cost too much to put it on the Syncrolift in Nelson for the amount of time for the work that it needs to have done to it. Now it's pretty far from my neighbour's boundary. This is 2.5 metres, nearly 3 metres to the fence, and then this driveway here is not my neighbour. This is actually the landlord's bit of land, so that's cool. And then the boundary of the neighbours over there is about 12 metres away, or probably even a bit longer than that. So we erected this here. At this end here, the piles go up to probably about 160, and the other side they're about 140. And of course I had a neighbour complain. It's got to be a new neighbour. There is an English bloke somewhere up here that's been grizzling about stuff. There's also been another English lady, but she didn't grizzle. She phoned me, which was great. She called up and said, hey, your dogs are barking. And I said, yeah, they do. It's the country, dogs bark and people arrive. She said, oh no, they're barking in the morning quite early. Or I get away sometimes at 5 o'clock when I go fishing and that, so it's not reasonable for a dog to be barking. And I said, listen, I'll get onto that. So I bought a bark collar for Pace, because he's the one that's doing it. Problem solved. The bark collar works well. It was a good investment. He doesn't bark anymore. And I called her back and said, look, I think I've rectified the problem, but let me know if there's any noise. And I did a follow-up 3 times. She works at home. She works in the business of helping people that are overseas wanting to immigrate to New Zealand. So she's a home worker. So she's here. She's in this place all the time. She's not going away. So when I'm away, if my dog's barking, it upsets her. I personally don't get upset about the dogs that bark over there or the noises. There's also been complaints about the tractors going. I mean, that's the countryside. There's going to be noise in the country, and the people who are complaining aren't the local people who've always been here. They're the people that have got lots of money, that they've moved into the country thinking it's going to be a nice, quiet, idyllic place, and they've found there's rural noises going on. That's right, Poe, eat some sheep shit. So anyway, that video of yesterday's I won't say confrontation. I filmed half of it until he asked me to please. He just told me to stop filming. Basically, the building inspector came out because one of my neighbours, and I'm only assuming it was the new one, it may not be, but nobody else around here, I've talked to them all and they said, no mate. So it kind of leaves that one person who hasn't come up and spoken to me, has registered a complaint about this. Now, this is a rural zone. I'm pretty sure I can build up to 100 square metres or 110 square metres of shed without a code of compliance. So I didn't really think I needed to apply for one for this either. But it turns out that I did. Bloody paradise ducks. Every deer stalker's nightmare. Always give you away. Anyway, it's there temporarily. Still got the strops. Still can be taken away. And the building inspector wants to know what's going to happen after it's gone, what the platform is going to be. Am I going to build on top of it? Because it is built to comply. I just haven't put in a proper building consent because I didn't think I need one. And maybe I don't. And maybe this is all just blown out of proportion. Anyway, point being is, if I find out who the neighbour was, and if I find out that it was the person I think it was, I won't be making a big deal about it. I'll be going up there with some wild pork and a bit of venison. Any crayfish if I've got any in the fridge. I say, hey mate, just want to introduce myself. I'm Clay. I heard you were unhappy about my houseboat. I just wanted to apologise for that if it upset you. It wasn't my intention. I only took it out of the water to mend it. And we're working on it right now. We've done a lot of work on it. I spent a lot of money, but it was the cheapest option. I inherited this from my father. I could never afford to buy this. Would be $250,000 to build today. My dad put his life's work into building this one here. I mean, he's built a few boats, but this was a real important one to him because it was what he was going to retire on, but he got sick. So we put it up on here to take the strakes off. There's the old strakes here. And as you can see, and this happens to stuff in the sea, as the shipworm gets in there, and it just fucks everything. So we've replaced that. Well, we haven't replaced it, we've taken them off. That's the next job. We're going to remove all the nails, and we're going to lift it up in sections. So this is why we've got the strakes running this way. Sorry, not the strakes, the joist, or the bearers at least. And here is where the strakes will be going. That's what we put, and they'll curve right up. And we'll anti-foul the hull. That's ongoing work. We've built a stairwell each end with secure rails so nobody can hurt, so it's all health and safety. We've made it as secure as we can, and we're working on it. And the neighbour that's driven up the driveway, or who's ever seen it, surely must see that, but still they've had to complain. Now, I'm not going to fall out with that person when I find out who it is, just for the simple reason I've told you. And this is the thing. In life, you never want to fall out with your neighbour because you see them on a day-to-day basis. If you fall out with your girlfriend, you can break up and you can go separate ways. If you've got a mate that does something like shags your missus, or even worse, goes on your hunting block without behind your back. Probably shouldn't have said it like that because that sounds bad, doesn't it? But that's just where I prioritise stuff. I can remember I had a mate that did do that years ago, and I forgave him, and we're still good mates today. But another mate that went on my hunting block behind my back and was doing it, I wiped my hands at him. It's funny, isn't it, the priorities we have? Yeah. That didn't mean to come out. I probably would like to delete that out of there, but I can't now because I'm doing a snap vlog off the phone, so I'll carry on. But anyway, point being is that you can choose if you want to keep that person as a mate or not, but when you live directly next door to somebody, and sometimes it's really close, you can't. So it's really important that you love thy neighbour. Just don't get caught. Seriously though, you need to have a good relationship with your neighbour because it can turn really toxic. And from my mate who was a cop, he taught me that, and I've taken it on. And I've never had a fallout with a neighbour. Well, actually, not true. Not true. I did years ago. That's another story for another day. She was criminal, and she did go to jail. So did her son go to jail. They all went to jail. But even then, I even gave her fish and I gave her pork and softened her up. But she was way out of line. Yeah, but that wasn't anything that really bothered me. It bothered everybody else, but I wouldn't let it bother me. I just kept on being nice to her. And I learnt that from my mother many years ago. And we're talking like 53 years ago, or 54 years ago, when I was 4 years of age. We lived next door to a lady called Mrs. Bennett. I remember her well. And she was an absolute cannibal woman. She was terrible. Everything she did to my mum was just like made my mum's life a living hell. But my mum's mother had taught her the same thing about being always kind to your enemies. And Mum would bake her banana cake and carrot cake. God, my mum used to make a nice banana cake. And she'd take it over to Mrs. Bennett when Mrs. Bennett was losing the plot. And I can remember as a little kid seeing my mum do this, thinking, why is she so nice to Mrs. Bennett? And Mum would teach me this. And it was a great thing she installed into me. And she'd say, Mrs. Bennett must be very unhappy if she's so horrible to us. She must be very unhappy in herself, so we've got to be nicer to her. And that really didn't, as a little kid, make much sense. But as I grew up, it kind of filled a few gaps. And I've always applied it. And I've always realised that people are horrible to me. And whether it's somebody smacking the thumbs down in a video or someone making a nasty comment, I do genuinely feel that they must be having a hard time, and I actually feel empathy towards them, because my mum taught me that when I was so small. And these things that you gain when you're tiny, they stick with you. They stick with you for life. Now, my dad was of the other side. My dad said, son, always stand up, and if you get knocked down, get back up again. And as far as fighting goes, and that one there didn't serve me so well, because being a small guy, I used to get into a lot of scraps when I was younger, and I would get back up and you'd get knocked down again, even worse. And I never quite learnt the bloody logic in that one. It just bloody hurt. I guess it was about pride, but that's just ego, and that never served anybody any good at the end of the day. We're going down to this pond here, and Anna Marie Woodcock, who's one of my patrons, suggested that I make a bigger pond than this, and I put the houseboat in it and floated in it. Well, there's a small one, and that probably cost me $1,000 just to get a digger in. So I guess you could times that by 10 and say $10,000. We could have a big lake here, and we could drop the houseboat in it. The only problem with that is the mosquitoes would live on it, and when you're living in the houseboat, you get bitten by mosquitoes each night. So I don't know if that's such a cool idea. And the houseboat does belong to the sea, and it's my intention to put it back in. It's all about money and time. Time is one thing that you can never get more of. You can get more money, but you can't get more time. So anyway, the day's talk to you guys and chat is what I've gained and what I've learned over the years. And I think it is important to get on well with your neighbour. And as I said before, love thy neighbour. Just don't love them too much. Yes, that happens too. Anyway, go steady in the day, check on yourself, check on your relationship with your neighbour, and have a bloody good day. Right, I've got some work to do. Dogs have had a very mellow walk. We're getting into hunting season soon, so it's going to be time to start getting them fit. Getting me fit as well, because I'm not very fit right now. You don't get fit just doing general work each day. You get work fit, but you don't get real fit. To get hunting fit, you need to hunt. There's no other better way to get fit than just to go hunting. That's what I'm going to be doing very soon. Start walking those hills with these dogs. Come on! Bixie, come! Bixie, come! Good boy. Good dog, Bixie. Good boy. That's a good boy. Good dog. You're a good dog. Yes, you are. Good boy. You're a good boy. Yes, mate. You're a special dog, aren't you? Yes, you are. Okay, away you go. Away you go. Away you go. See you guys.